Seems like we have some playoff clarity heading into championship weekend. 4 playoff teams appear to control their own fate. Michigan beating Ohio State. Georgia probably in no matter what happens in the SEC championship game. The 2 biggest questions, Caleb Williams and USC, and unbeaten TCU as well, but they had a convincing blowout of Iowa State to finish up their perfect regular season. This is how Jerry Palm projects the playoff to look when the pairings are announced this weekend, Sunday, after championship Saturday. Georgia taking on USC. Keep in mind, USC plays the Pac-12 championship against Utah on Friday night, and he has Michigan taking on TCU in the other semifinal. So let's get down to it with Jerry Palm, who has his playoff projections and bowl projections up at CBSSports.com. Jerry, it seems clear-cut right now. Which of these teams, though, in your top 4 have already clinched a spot no matter what happens in their respective championship games?
I believe all 3 undefeated teams will make the playoff, win or lose. Georgia, obviously the dominant team all season long. Michigan with that impressive win over Ohio State. And then TCU, the way that they have dominated the Big 12 this year. I don't think a loss by any of those 3 is going to put them out of the top 4 entirely, especially given who is chasing right now. You know, USC, of course, number 4, they would have to win. They're not getting in with 2 losses, but the teams right behind them, 11-1 Ohio State, couldn't win the Big Ten, couldn't even compete with Michigan in the second half of that game, and then 10-2 Alabama. Those are not teams that look likely to be able to replace a 12-1 team from among those 3 undefeateds if they were to lose their next game.
The USC-Utah Pac-12 championship game is on Friday night. USC is a 3-point favorite. If the Trojans win that game, are you saying the playoff spots will be locked up going to Saturday?
Yeah, now the order could change, but the 4 teams that are going to be in, yes, those will be the 4 teams going into Saturday.
Okay, let's predict the college football playoff rankings, which will be released tomorrow. And obviously, Georgia is going to remain number 1, one would think. We know your top 4 at this point. But when you look down to Ohio State, Alabama, Tennessee, Penn State, those are some more teams that could be in the conversation, I guess, if you want to really stretch it. I think Tennessee fans, though, Jerry, are wondering why they wouldn't be the team considered for that spot that Alabama is being considered for since they beat the Tide.
Actually, that could happen. What happened this week is that the 2 teams between them in last week's rankings lost. So that's likely to put those 2 together in the rankings, and the committee might then reevaluate whether or not that head-to-head game should matter. I think the loss of Hendon Hooker could play on their mind a little bit, although they didn't seem to miss them this week. They beat Vanderbilt 56-0. But they had Alabama ahead of Tennessee last week. The fact that they're going to probably be next to each other in the rankings this week may not change that they feel Alabama's better. But that head-to-head result is now more likely to come into play if they do end up right next to each other in the rankings.
So how many questions are we going to have answered by the playoff rankings tomorrow as it pertains to those teams 5, 6, and 7?
Yeah, that's really it. That's where the questions are going to be answered, because the number 5 team is the team that replaces USC if the Trojans get beat. The number 5 team isn't going to make the college football playoff any other way. But if USC gets beat, that number 5 team is the one that's going to move up because nobody else is playing among that group of teams. So it is really important to see where the committee feels about number 5 in particular this week.
So if USC loses and all of a sudden you bring in Ohio State, Alabama, maybe Tennessee, how do you compare their chances to get that last spot?
Well, whoever's number 5 is going to be the team to get that last spot if USC loses, because USC is not going to stay ahead of that group like the 3 undefeated teams would if they were to take a loss on Saturday. USC loses at 11-2. They're not going to stay ahead of the number 5 team in the rankings. They might stay ahead of number 6, but they're probably not going to stay ahead of number 5.
You have Ohio State as the projected number 5 team. Is that solely based on the fact that they're the only one-loss team there compared to Alabama and Tennessee?
That's part of it, but it also has to do with Ohio State's dominance throughout the rest of its schedule and the fact that they got a quality non-conference win in Notre Dame. If the roles were switched with Ohio State and Michigan, I don't know that I would have Michigan at number 5. But I feel better about Ohio State's chances because of the win over Notre Dame in non-conference play.
Okay, so Jerry Palm believes that 3 spots are already locked up in the college football playoff. Georgia, Michigan, TCU are in. USC will be in if they beat Utah on Friday. If they don't, then Ohio State, Alabama, maybe a Tennessee would have a chance. But we're going to answer that tomorrow when the playoff rankings come out. Whoever comes in at number 5 is going to be the one and only team, according to Jerry, that's going to have a chance here. Let's go to the New Year's 6 spots. How much is up in the air for some of those spots, like the Group of 5 automatic berth?
Yeah, the Group of 5 automatic berth will be the winner of UCF and Tulane out of the American Conference, and I don't think that's up for grabs unless Boise State suddenly appears not just in the rankings, but kind of high up in the rankings, and in particular ahead of UCF in the rankings, and that seems pretty unlikely. So I think it's going to be the American champion. But these other rankings, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe even 10, those are going to have a lot to say about which teams are going to be in the other New Year's 6 games. Now, Kansas State is playing TCU in the Big 12, and I believe TCU is in the playoff win or lose, which means Kansas State is in the Sugar Bowl win or lose, and regardless of where it's ranked. But some of these other games are good, especially the one spot in the Cotton Bowl and the opponent for the ACC champion in the Orange Bowl are likely to be determined by the rankings themselves. That's
Jerry Palm. He has his playoff projections and all of his bowl projections on CBSSports.com heading into championship weekend, which begins on Friday for the big boys, USC and Utah in the Pac-12 championship. Here are some of the other notable projections. LSU in the SEC championship game. He has them in the Citrus Bowl against Purdue, assuming a defeat in that SEC championship game. They've been eliminated from playoff contention with a 3rd loss this season and a bad loss at Texas A&M. Notre Dame, Mississippi State in the Gator Bowl, Texas, Utah in the Alamo Bowl.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.